Hello, welcome to episode 30 of Women of the Future. Today's topic is an interesting one. It is entitled, I Never Lay Down My Sword. Now, if one hears this title, there emerges on the screen of one's mind some rather violent images, but it's not as gross as that. So I invite you to make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit back and enjoy the half an hour with us. I'm here in the studio with Sister Denise, who is giving us the benefit of her own spiritual experience. It's great to have you back, Sister Denise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now tell me, I never laid down my sword. That can be interpreted on so many levels, can't it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But I think that some of us have an agenda which is a sort of higher purpose. And of course, very interestingly, the sword and the pen are, considered equivalent. And in this case, I think I would really be thinking about it similarly as I would think of the pen, which is said that the pen is sharper than the sword.
Yeah.
And it's to do with, I don't give up. I have something that I wish to accomplish. I will not be deterred. I will not give up. I have the patience. I can wait. I can go around the obstacles, whatever it is, but I will not stop until I have achieved what I set out to achieve.
So the adage is an act of determination. Not an act, it is an aspect of determination.
I would say, yeah.
Okay, so Sister Denise, it's got nothing to do with violence, it's got nothing to do with ugliness, because the physical image of somebody never lay down their sword is somebody brandishing a very sharp weapon that could kill.
Well, you know, the sword is a symbol of the intellect.
Oh, there aren't many people who know that.
Yeah, there's an image in India which is to do with the incarnations of God. And so it is said that the last incarnation of God is a man on a black horse with a very sharp sword who is, galloping through the night. And the way I interpret that is that your horse is, of course, the symbol of the mind. The night is the time period of darkness, ignorance, negativity, and you cut through that with a very sharp intellect, which kind of carries the light of truth. So it's a very beautiful image, and one can identify with it and say, yes, let me on some level represent that kind of light and let my intellect be usable to clarify things, And I think in many ways this program is about looking at our legacy, especially for women, and what are we doing, thinking, what our focus of attention is to create the future, which is what we want, the right future, a future in which women have a say, have a place, and that the difficulties of the legacy of the past are over, history.
When one takes on this expression, what does it mean to you personally? What does it mean to somebody who's on a spiritual journey personally? What do you do with the sword?
Well, the sword is to cut hairs, to split hairs, to split the difference between what's right, what's wrong. And it can be a very fine difference, so you need a very sharp blade. And also in the teachings that we study in Rajyoga, it is said that your sword has to have the sharpness of yoga. So if you are intellectually astute, but you don't have the quality of spirituality in it, it can be brutal, it can be harsh. But if your sharp intellect has that quality of spirituality, which is a softness, then you're doing a kind of surgery. Surgery on people's hearts. Surgery which frees people from having mentalities that are harmful for themselves, this sort of thing. And not letting go of doing that, you see, because there'd be many obstacles.
The image of somebody who carries a sword in their hands, your lovely analogies notwithstanding, is somebody who's engaged in battle. What is the person, the woman, battling? You're not fighting someone, from what I gathered. You're fighting something.
You're also fighting for something.
Okay, what fight are you referring to?
Well, you're fighting for righteousness. You're fighting for truth. You're fighting for quality of life, you know, and you're not allowing negativity to just roll over you and take you out. You're saying, no, over my dead body, will you do this, you know?
So the determined one is not fighting another human being. The fight is with your own darkness?
Not necessarily. It can be. You have to fight your demons, no doubt. But at the same time as the inner battle, which in a way qualifies you to head out into the larger world, where you can sort of represent light in a world of darkness, represent the value of the feminine in a world that doesn't value the feminine. That may not involve violence, but it is a form of battle, and it requires all the things that you need in battle, like courage and skill and all of this. Yeah.
I'd like you to take the last answer further. What is the hallmark of an accomplished swordswoman?
Well, you don't hack away.
That is exactly the image that comes to mind.
No, there's different kinds of swords, of course, but
I'm thinking of the one that's, you know, Excalibur style with the...
there's a straight, sharp one.
Straight, sharp one. But irrespective, it's still a very dangerous instrument. So tell us, Sister Denise, what are these qualities that you cough up to be a good swordswoman?
I don't think you cough them up.
You don't cough them up.
You acquire the skill. You see, a sword is a knife. It's got a point on the end, and it's all about reaching the mark, your target. So all of these things are images for the work of the intellect. Now, the intellect is the instrument that carries ideas. So you have to be able to hit your target, which is another person's mind, with your point of information so they get it.
So you're refining your intellect every time you do this?
Yeah, you're refining. It's about precision. It's about being cool. You can't be emotional. If you're emotional, your sword will not be stable and steady. So I think that the woman who's using the sword or won't lay down the sword has to be very good at being dispassionate while being compassionate.
Whatever you just said sounds wonderful, but I do not want any viewer leaving this episode, you know, fumbling with the theory of what we just said. I'd like to make this practical. There are many viewers who have the weakness of fear, slight fear, deep fear, crippling fear. And I know what you're going to say. I'm not talking about the real legitimate fear that one should have. I'm talking about an overwhelming sense of fear where you're fearful and anxious all the time. Okay? Tell us how you would use the expression, I never lay down my sword, in that scenario.
I don't think that you will use your sword there. I would, if I may, give you a real example. There's a woman who is being very badly treated in her marriage, has discovered different illegal and immoral activities that her husband is doing, and she is wanting it to be taken care of through the legal system or whatever. The society says she doesn't have a right to do that, she should handle it, she should tolerate it, whatever. There is a very good situation where you bring in your sword to counteract that social prejudice, so that those people who pursue that prejudiced attitude can no longer do that, because you take down all their arguments and you stand up for the rights of that woman. It's something more like that.
So does using your sword entail communication?
Yes, totally.
What type of communication? The reason I'm asking this is because when you are in a situation where you are being victimized, all your own negative qualities pop to the fore.
Well, they may pop to the fore, but if you have a good sharp sword, you'll be able to take care of yourself with your sharp sword, you see. So if you're being victimized verbally or in any other way, you have to be able to take care of yourself, to defend yourself, to represent yourself. And I mean, many women get paralyzed by those situations and they can't. And sometimes even to come to the assistance of a woman who is unable to look after herself through that sword, that is a very good sisterly act to perform, you see, because what you're dealing with is social prejudices which are biased against women, and you need to be able to redress that bias, because it is negative karma, but it is thought to be positive karma. It's not, you see. In the earlier example that you used, you see somebody's in a state of fear because there's some threat to that person. The person who's in a state of fear, of course, they're paralyzed by their fear. Now, if you say the person who's in that state of fear, they have to get a hold of their sword, I don't think it would happen, because the person with a good sharp sword, they're practiced, they're skilled, they deal with threat, not with fear. They are practiced in courage. So a threat comes, they meet it with courage. They don't sit in fear and then figure out, oh, I better get some courage. That's way too late.
Okay, so what you're saying is somebody who has a refined intellect, a sharp sword, to use your terminology, will meet a weakness from the external as well as the internal with a virtue.
I think that the sharp sword in this case is not only a refined intellect, it's also, you know, skill in battle. Skill in battle means you're far-sighted, you're fast, you've got 360-degree vision, you get your points in. There's many, many different aspects. I think in a way you could compare it to someone who's skilled in the martial arts. They'll be skilled in everything, and then when a threat comes, all of your skills come with you and you meet that threat. You see, somebody who doesn't know how to fight, who doesn't know how to manage their emotions, they are doomed when there's any threat. And so it's in a way you could say, okay, because there is so much harassment against women that goes on in the world today, it is appropriate for all women to learn self-defense because of the present danger. Now that's on a physical level. You can add to that intellectual level, spiritual level, because women are in an environment that is, in most cases, many cases, hostile. And it's not hostile all the time, but the possibility of a hostile situation comes up way too often for you to think that it's rare and it won't happen to me. It very well could. So you need to, in a sense, be prepared. You know, a woman with daughters has to be able to come to the assistance of her daughters with a very sharp sword, you see, because otherwise, oh, you know, I couldn't do anything. Excuse me, you could.
Okay, so that's an interesting take on the subject. You were saying that somebody who never lays down their sword is a woman who is an individual who refuses to be a victim.
Yes.
Ah, okay, finally we're getting somewhere. Okay, so the victim mentality is somebody who tracks negativity, whereas a powerful mentality is somebody that's able to deflect negativity.
Yeah, negativity is there. It's not there all the time, but it's there. And I think also what we're talking about is don't be naive, don't be gullible, don't be easily taken in, because that's really not sensible.
And a lot of viewers fall into the category of being naive.
Well, people say, oh, you know, it feels good, it must be good, or I don't feel any danger, so there wouldn't be any. You have to kind of add common sense to your feelings, you know, and add some basic knowledge of the way the world is to your feelings. Otherwise, you know, naivety is not a virtue.
Yeah. Yeah, though innocence is.
Well, innocence may protect you, but it needs to be, you need to add to innocence some wisdom.
So Denise, I asked you this question earlier, but I would like to refine it. How does a woman who wishes to take what you just said to heart develop herself so that she can embrace life with a positive attitude, okay, without being fearful all the time and continue looking over her shoulder and thinking who's going to attack me next or what's going to come up next? How does one be prepared and be positive at the same time?
I think it's not about being fearful, you know, being fearful. Why we have to be fearful? We don't have to be fearful, but we have to be sensible. You know, we have to have proper locks on the doors. We have to be able to know how to handle ourselves in case of this or that. It's kind of insurance policy for the self, you know.
That's a nice way of putting it.
And be with it. Be just not unaware, you know. That there's no value in being ignorant. And so you are in your power, you have your courage, you develop skills as a hobby, intellectual skills, you educate yourself, you make yourself competent in as many areas as you can. Each thing adds to the value and quality of you as a person. That's a good thing.
I really like that, developing yourself in every area that you can. What most of us do is that we only develop ourselves in one or two areas of life and leave the rest blank.
To fate.
Yeah, and that's not wisdom, is it?
Well, I think it's another form of caring for the self, you know, honouring the self.
To be an all-rounded woman?
Yeah, to get as many skills as you can. That makes you feel so much better about yourself. Yeah, I can do this, I can do that. I don't need this, I'm not, you know, I can change a light bulb, I can change a plug, I can deal with the leaking taps, I can deal with something wrong with the car, you know, I don't have to, oh, I need rescuing. Excuse me, why?
What is the condition and quality of one's relationships if you're a person that you just described? It can't possibly be antagonistic, can it? Because an image of somebody walking around with their sword all the time is somebody who's prepared for battle.
Well, that's if you have it out of its sheath.
Oh, so you keep it hidden?
No, you don't need it hidden, you keep it there. You
Right, okay.
Any tiger comes along.
I see. The image of a samurai comes to mind.
Yes, very much. A samurai is really good, you know.
Why?
Well, there's a whole very interesting scripture related to the training of a samurai.
Hagakura?
The Hagakura, exactly. And it's Japanese. And of course, the samurai is a warrior. And in a way, we do live in an adversarial world, so you come in very much as a warrior, but there are codes and there are mental attitudes and practices that you need to develop as a samurai. And I think, you know, that you can be a spiritual samurai if you want to.
What is that?
The thing that the Hagakura says is you have to be ready to die. And so, you know, sometimes you may be, say, character assassinated, and that may be so extreme that you can't handle it. But if you're ready to die on various different levels, if by chance, God forbid, if by chance it comes, you know what to do because you're prepared in advance. Okay, you can embrace it, you can handle it and move forward. It doesn't paralyze you. Or if some betrayal happens, or if some disaster happens, whatever, but you're forearmed and you can move on, move into it, and you know, your strength has got a lot of practical applications. It's just there, ready. Nothing happens, great. Something happens, not a problem.
I'd like to take you back to my previous question. What is the quality of relationships that one has if you're so armed? I take it that the person that you just described, who's that skilled, is never an aggressor, but simply knows how to defend herself.
Yeah.
I can't see any virtue in being an aggressor, but I can see the virtue in knowing how to stand up for yourself and defending your name, your honor, and your dignity. That I see. But what is one's relationships like?
I mean, if you're a good driver, a defensive driver, high-speed driver if necessary, but you know your car well, you understand speed, you understand distance, you know how to control the machinery, and you are with the other drivers on the road, you know. So in life you have close, intimate relationships, you have quite close relationships, you have distant relationships, and I think it's very important to be skilled in having good relationships and being able to, you know, choose who comes really close to you, your professional relationships, all the different relationships, and that you are, you know, powerful enough to be vulnerable.
It's a very interesting paradox. Powerful enough to be vulnerable. Wow.
Because
Wow.
if you're weak, you're always, you know, like this. And, you know, one of my favorite songs is The Rose, which has got certain lines like, it's the heart afraid of breaking who never learns to love, or the soul afraid of dying who never learns to live. You have to be powerful to open yourself up and just let whatever happens, happens, because whatever it is, good or bad, you can manage it. You're not afraid, it's not conditional.
Okay. On that unconditional note, we will say goodbye to the viewer. So there you have it. I never laid down my sword. It's a very powerful image, and one that has deep spiritual significance. This imagery does not imply the spilling of any blood. It implies and speaks to a woman, who is empowered to handle whatever life sends her way. Very powerful and very beautiful message. And I would ask you to reflect on this and ask yourself, can you handle whatever life sends your way, using the sword of your knowledge, your powers and your own wisdom. Sister Denise has shared a beautiful half an hour with us, and I hope that whatever you heard in this talk is of some use to you. Take care, and thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.